Kelim Perik Chafei Mishnah Tes, a very important Yesodistic Mishnah. But we're still carrying on a little bit with Acharaim and Toich. It's very easy, don't get worried. Klei Hektish, Klei HaKodesh, Ein Lehem Acharaim v'Toich, Ve'ein Beis Tzvia. In other words, all these rules that we said in the Perik, that we have a split treatment between Toich and Acharaim. That means if the Toich becomes Tomei, the whole Keli becomes Tomei. But if the Acharaim becomes Tomei, if the Mashkin Tameim touch the Acharaim, remember we're only dealing with Mashkin Tameim in this Perik. If Mashkin Tameim touch the Acharaim, then only the Acharaim becomes Tomei. And the difference of Beis Tzvia for Tumas Yadayim, for instance. Sometimes we split the treatment between Acharaim and Beis Tzvia. All those rules apply only to Taras Truma when we're dealing with Truma and maybe even Chulin. But if we're dealing with Kodesh, if we want to know whether this Keli can be Mitame Kodesh, we don't have any split treatment. If a Kli is Tomei, the inside is Tomei, the outside is Tomei, the Beis Tzvia is Tomei, the whole thing is Keli, is Tomei. So, in other words, a person can actually have a Keli in his kitchen, a very complicated Keli. Midaraisa, the Keli is Torah, because Mashkan can't be Mitame Kelim. For Truma purposes, you can have a Kli where this part is Tomei, the inside is Torah, the outside is Tomei the Acharaim, and depending whether he's dealing with Tumas Yadayim, the whole outside, including the Beis Tzvia or not, has a split treatment, based on the previous Mishnahs. But for Kodesh, the whole Keli is Tomei, because for Kodesh we don't split it, so it's quite complicated to keep track of your Kelim. Another difference between Kodesh and Truma, and in other words, states of Tara less than Kodesh. Ve'imat bidin Kelim ser Kelim le Kodesh. These are all Mishnahs in the Chagiga at the beginning of Chayim Kodesh, where it lists all the differences between Kodesh and Truma. Picks out two here. There's another Chumrah of Kodesh over Truma, that for Kodesh, you're not allowed to be toivel a Kli inside another Kli. You've got two Kelim, so you put the inner one in the outer one. For instance, you may have a bunch of knives and forks you want to be toivel, so you put them all in a big pot and put the whole thing in the mikveh. For Truma you can do that. For Kodesh you can't. There's machlokes in the Gemara why you can't. One Amoira says because it's just a chumrah, simply because when Kelim lie on the bottom of the Kli, there could, if it's very heavy, there could be a chatzitza. So they made an overall gzeira, don't do it at all. For Kodesh. For Truma, they relied on people to know the dinim of chatzitza. Rava says there are different reasons in Gunson. Rava has a more complicated reason. Rava says the reason why we don't want you to put Keli inside Keli, because sometimes you can put, let's say, a knife and a fork inside an outer jar where the opening of the jar is very, very narrow. It's got a very small opening, less than the size of a shveferes hanoid, a special pipe which is the shear for connecting two mikvois. If you have a bottle where the opening is less than a shveferes hanoid, it means the water inside the bottle, as you put it into the mikveh, is actually disconnected from the outside mikveh, and therefore the knife and fork inside the bottle isn't toiveled. And there are, again, different scenarios where sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Because of this complicated din, Robert said, just leave it alone, don't toivel things inside something else, a din only in Kodesh. Now comes another, one of the most important rules in the whole Masechta. Kol HaKelim. We're finished with Kodesh, we're finished with Truma, we're finished with Mashkin, all of this we're finished with. This is a din which applies to the whole Masechta. Kol HaKelim yored in a day to Mosan, b'machshava. Any Keli can enter the field of Tumah. In other words, it can start to be ro'id, to be makabel Tumah, just with a machshava. But the reverse, ve'enam oilim a day to Mosan, if they're already Tomei, or for instance they're already ro'id lekabel Tumah, and you want to go lekula and stop it being roy lekabel Tumah, you can't do that with the machshava. That must be done ela b'shinui ma'aseh. You've actually got to do a physical action. And there are many cases that this can apply to. The simple case, which the Gemara says, is, for instance, you have a ring, a metal ring, a gold ring, a brass ring. If that brass ring is made for a taba'as of an odom, to be as an ornament on a person's body, then it's Makabel Tumah under the rules of Tachshit. However, if the ring is a Tabas Behema, a Tabas Behema, being a Tashmish Behema, is not called a Tashmish Odom and therefore not Makabel Tumah. If you have a ring for a Behema, and you make a machshava, you have a decision, without doing any masa, I now want to change this ring to be from a Tabas Behema to a Tabas Odom, the minute you have that machshava, the Tabas now is Makabel Tumah L'chumra. We go L'chumra for Kabbalas Tumah. Machshava allows you to change the status of the Kli to be Makabel Tumah. However, the other way around, if you have a Tabas Odom, and you now want to say it's not able to be Makabel Tumah anymore, I want to change it to a Tabas Behema, you cannot do that. You cannot get rid of the Kabbalas Tumah just with the Machshava. You've actually got to do something physical to the Kili, to changing it into a Tabas Behema. The Mishnah carries on, Sha'amase mevatel miyad hamase umiyad machshava. Maase can change a previous maase or machshava. Whether it originally became roy lekabel tumah through a maase or a maase can undo that. So if you had a ring which became able to be mekabel tumah either through a maase or through just a machshava, you can then do a maase, the opposite, reverse it with a maase. However, machshava eina mevateles loy miyad maase v'loy miyad machshava. A machshava can never reverse a kabbalas tumah that came into place through a maase or a machshava can't reverse that at all. Another simple case of a machshava working, going back to the rule of the words, kol kelim yoredin to mosam machshava, for instance, if you have a keli or something being made, being manufactured, and normally there's a process, the manufacture has to be done 100%, all the way to the end, then it's Makabel Tumah. You, the manufacturer, decide, I'm going to stop at this stage. So I won't polish it off. I'll leave it as it is. It's still useful. The fact you've made the machshava decision not to do any more gemara malacha to this, again, that's another thing that could be incorporated in the words, kol kelim yoredin adei tumoson b'machshava. Similarly, if you have just trying to think of another case. I don't want to mix you up. That's enough cases. The only last thing I want to say is this idea of machshava. There's a big word is a plonter in the Rishonim and Achronim, whether machshava means literally a thought or does it have to be a dibur. There's Tosis Yom Tov, there's a Mishnah Lemerach and a Menches Chinuch, but it does seem at the end of the day, although for certain halachas in the Torah, when it says machshava, for instance for shlichus yad, you actually have to do a dibur, same with pigul. But for tumah purposes, it does seem that a simple machshava in itself would do the trick to be moirid the kli to kabbalas tumah. And that's the end of Perek Chav Hei, and we're going to move on to Perek Chav Vav Mitz Hashem, where we move over from all the kelim mentioned in the previous Masechta, in the Masechta previously. We're now going to the soft, the fabrics, the begodim, and the leather. So let's enjoy Perek Chav Vav to Lamed coming up soon.